When you start to get interested in reading the Bible, you spend a lot of time, or I should say you waste a lot of time, listening to people. And I'm just going to, you know me, I put stuff out there, I don't mince words. Somebody will advise you on what chapter and what verse where should you start. I've had enough experience with people giving advice, and it's the worst advice. Pick a book, any book, just start reading, or the people that say read it in order from cover to cover. Look, the problem is if an individual is looking for answers, which is usually why people start reading the Bible in the first place, kind of at least start with some very small baby steps. Of course, Old and New Testament, and that each part contains so many books and what the books represent. Some of the books are prophetic, some of them are poetic, some of them are more a narrative, if you will, something that is like the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis to me is a combination of a lot of things. It contains in it the roadmap of our origins. That's why it's called the book of Genesis. But it also tells us a lot about God's ways before the law. There's so many things that I could go down the path and say, but understanding, essentially getting a feel for what you're looking at, an overall picture, a gestalt, something that says, I understand. It's not enough to say this is God's book or this is inspired writing, but how each book can be summarized, we'll say in a succinct way, so that you're able to say, this is the book of beginnings, and this is the book of essentially an explanation of the more minute or the minutia of the law. This is a book that's the summary of the children of Israel. However you want to do that, but that's what's important. When you've gotten the gist of that, it's important to look at, for example, the Old Testament and understand that there's information in there that kind of puts a timeline together, and understanding the timeline, not memorizing it, but understanding it from, and I'm not even suggesting, as some have done, like Bishop Ussher and others that have said, with 6,000 years, I'm not talking about that. I'm just looking at a linear fashion to look at approximately when the books were written, their inspired writers. So if you've got a good stretch just of the Old Testament, now, the Old Testament comes to a close with Malachi. You've got 400 years, what people like to say 400 years of silence, which there was not. But there is no book that has been put in the canon during those 400 years. Then we arrive at the New Testament. Now, these are the things that, they're my pet peeves, okay? I'm doing this for a really good reason. They're my pet peeves when I hear people say, oh, I talked to this person, they're interested in reading the Bible, I told them to read, and it's always the same thing. Told him to read the book of John. It's a mistake. And why is it a mistake? Well, first of all, there's no right way to read the Bible. That's number one. Number two, pointing somebody to say, well, you should start with the book of John, and usually it's this, because John represents love, and that's not even why I would start if I was going to, and I wouldn't say start in John. But it's important to look at each one of the writers and understand who they are in relation to Jesus Christ, because people who are starting to read the Bible don't even know the difference. They don't know that Paul wasn't a disciple of Jesus. You'd be surprised at what people don't know. So you get to know who the writers are, their relation or their connection, immediate that is, to Christ. And then once you've established that, you're getting a ballpark of what each book contains. So as you go through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you're looking at perspectives of writers who are essentially chronicling whether they were firsthand eyewitnesses, jotting down what they remember Jesus saying, or maybe it's the case of Luke, who said, I'm set out to put all things in order, and I personally do not believe that Luke was with Jesus as one who traveled with him, but certainly he must have interviewed enough people that were immediately around Jesus to be able to say, I'm going to put all things in order. So it's much better to try and explain and give, we'll call them vignettes, if you will, and do that type of an approach to where the person can then say, okay, I get it. I'm going to start with, and they can make their mind up, and then they commit to doing that. But if the person has a good overview, and that, honestly, if somebody's asking you, you could very easily do. You know, John is talking about the eternal, because in the beginning was the Word. He's not going to the genealogies to begin with the birth of Christ. He's going back behind all that to before. So we have John kind of in the eternal perspective. If you're looking at each one of the writers, they're chronicling from a different, we'll call it an angle or perspective. Eternal, one is the servant, the suffering servant. So each one of these, as a proper understanding, gives more insight into what you're reading. But once you're there, again, this is my pet peeve. People will, there's a whole list of these comments. And this one actually really gets my goat. I don't know why this makes me so angry. Most of you are highly intelligent. There are a few of you who don't listen to anything I say, and I don't even know why you listen to me. I don't know why you bother listening to me. This is a whole bunch of people commenting on something that I'm about to show you. And here is an individual. All these people are talking about what is being talked about. And here's some individual who says, I thought I remember Gene Scott saying King James is the Bible. Well, I'm not Gene Scott, and I'm trying to educate people on what Bible and why. And no, I'm not one of these diehard people that if you're not reading the Bible like I'm reading, you're not going to be getting the right information. Why? Because I'm translating as I go along. I'm doing the things as I go. So from my perspective, I'm only interested in one thing, that you stick to reading the Bible and you stick to studying it. If you're listening to me and you're really going to start listening to me, use whatever Bible you use to just free flow read, and get yourself a King James to make all the corrections in. Or get an empty 3-ring binder and make the corrections as you go, titling what book I'm working out of. But the whole point is for you to be able to understand not who's right, who's wrong, because this person over here said only read this or I only use that. I'm so tired of the insanity of people who say the most ignorant things, and they're the ones who've been taught. So that's my pet peeve for that individual. Well, Gene Scott used the King James, and I use the King James too, but it is not the Bible that I would give somebody who's just starting out if they were saying, I'm serious to learn the Bible. First thing I'd want to know is, what's your reading skill? What's your reading level? And that's important, because if you don't understand what you're reading, this is what happens in your brain. It's like the 405 at rush hour with an accident, with 3 million different things going on. You are not going to understand what you're reading. And don't think that I'm trying to talk down to people. I'm trying to get people to come up. Start by being honest with yourself. What level of reader are you? That will determine what Bible you should first pick to be able to read through. That is the gestalt of understanding. And the only Bible I've said over and over that I do not recommend is the Message Bible. I don't recommend it because it's so stretched out of place that there are so many glosses in there, it's impossible. But for my purpose, there's only one motivation, and there's only ever going to be one motivation: to bring people to a relationship with Jesus Christ. How do you do that when you don't understand what you're reading? So the reason why I'm emphasizing this is because for too long, I've had the same thing, and it's the question that's asked over and over, and I don't mind answering it. But it's time for us to kind of have a little eye-opening moment that not everybody is at the level, at the reading level. King James is, in fact, the most difficult in terms of, I've said this before, you can start all the way down at the bottom, which is, I think, the NIVR, and go all the way up to, I think it's in grade 12 or something beyond grade 12 reading in the King James Bible. So, as I said, I will never point somebody and say, well, I think you should start reading here. That, by the way, is, I just think that is the biggest error. What might have been eye-opening for me may not be the same eye-opening for somebody else. That person has to find their way. And in fact, when I got a Bible, and I've told you this before, I actually stole my first Bible out of Dr. Scott's closet somewhere, found it, and it was a little red Bible, and I said, can I have this Bible? I want this Bible. And I didn't ask any other questions except, could I have the Bible? Could I keep it? And I was so hungry to learn, I just sat down and I just started to read. I didn't ask, I didn't need. Some people need to be told, so I'm telling you why. Now, I'm very, very grateful to my staff because I said I wanted to do this so that people could finally see the value of understanding this. And I pray that this will be a tool to help people. We're not done. There's more to this back there who worked on this. There's more to this. But if you go to my website, go to the homepage, and you're going to see here, what Bible should I use? Now, the article that introduces it kind of gives you a little idea of what, and then you click here. Now, if you scroll down, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to, we tried to shrink my screen for you, but if you do this on your computer at home, you'll see the full page as it occurs. So let's go down here, and let's start right at the bottom. So here we have here, starting at the bottom and moving our way up, you can see you've got the Septuagint, you've got the early Hebrew, original Old Testament, Dead Sea Scrolls. So as you navigate this, and the design of this, of course, is, by the way, as I said, this is not finished. It's the structure. I'm just delighted that they put it up. My goal actually is to create that each one of these, for example, like the Vaticanus, that you could click on it and it would be one of our own scans that we've produced from our own manuscripts, where I'm not suggesting, because I don't think we will live long enough to be able to scan, say, the whole, let's just say the whole Sinaiticus. We couldn't do that, but we could definitely at least scan an example, put it up there so that people can see what it looks like. And as you navigate this, you begin to see the order of, again, how we've progressed. And each one of these eventually will have some fact to it, like a did you know, for example, like the Stephanus. I have a both 1550 and a 1551, which some of you may remember was on display for a long time. And that would be wonderful to be able to click on that and to be able to see all the handwritten notes throughout the whole Bible. At least one page where you've got a lot of notes and you can see what the paper looked like, what the print looked like. So that's the whole idea. But as you navigate through here, you keep moving up, and you can see that at the top here, we've got these other modern English translations. And it basically takes you through, some of these are more common, if you will, more available and more common than others. And then you can get familiar with. And this is, again, the intent here will be, and I believe that we can go to a second page to see it, examples of the same scripture straight across the board. So you can get an idea of what the intent of those who were creating their version were attempting to do. And I've referenced this many times. For example, the NIV, we know, was done in 1978, and it was done kind of, number one, to be an easier read, and also we had the benefit of having, with the finds of the Dead Sea Scrolls and other manuscripts, some of that information then got integrated into the NIV. So there's good reason to look at all this. And somebody asked me, like what in all of these, would you recommend something? Well, if you're really curious, it's one of the reasons why I have several of these. It's, for example, I think one of them is the Old Testament. I think it's an octuplus. I think it has 8 versions across. I've got another one that is the New Testament, and it is, and I use it a lot, very frequently. You've seen me hold it up, and it's got the different versions in it. So it gives you a sense sometimes if you've done the translation, and sometimes we're going to be looking at a definite or an indefinite article. You've done the translation, everything is hinging on one small, just one little, let's just say it's a definite article. Sometimes going to the original will go as far as we can go. It may behoove us to look at other translators' attempts to convey the meaning of the text with whatever they did. It does not necessarily mean it's going to be accurate, but it may give a sense, which is why, for example, the Amplified Bible was very popular. I don't know that it's that popular anymore because a lot of people don't even understand the benefit of using it. But the Amplified Bible, you're reading along and then it will have an elaboration with several different words to kind of help you with the one word that they're trying to elaborate on. So it really just depends on what your study style is, what your way of learning is. And these are the things, this is why I said to you, this really bothers me. You have to be honest with yourself. What is your reading level and how do you should know this by now, how do you learn? Not everybody learns the same way. Some people are visual learners, they have to see. Other people, most people are by repetition. Usually it's that repetition that helps to learn. But some people can read something and then come back to it an hour or a day later, and that's the way they process it. So when I say to you, it's important to understand and figure out how you learn when you read, how you're processing the information. Reading the Bible is vastly different than reading the headlines of the news. You're not trying to retain. I mean, you may remember it in your short-term memory, but you're truly not trying to retain it as relevant information. In fact, most of it is not relevant information. But that's the idea. And when you can rightly assess how you learn, how you process, and what level you're at, you've now deduced a couple of things. The Bible you're going to start with. That's the key thing. So some people get a Bible and they say, well, I've got this Bible now, and they just continue with that. You start at the place where it's an entry level for you, where you're able to read and read through with absolute understanding. Then you move up. Once you have read enough in that version that's in your comfortable reading zone, you move up a little bit. It's not going to do anything more than basically challenge and get you to ask more questions, because you're going to find yourself saying, well, these don't read the same. What exactly is being said here? Which then brings me back to why you should be listening to me as I translate things from either Hebrew or from the Greek, or if I'm using another language for emphasis. And that makes the balance of everything we do here. This was done to help people understand. If you're not understanding what you're reading in your own devotions, what good is it? It means nothing. So the point is, this is designed for you. Now, as you move up here, you've got the reading levels. Let's go across here. So, for example, this NIRV, and I said NIVR, but NIRV is reading level 3. And then you can just kind of move all the way through until you get to the King James, as you can see, is at level 12. And if you travel down this, let's go forward here. All right, now we come to the page to see a history and comparison of English Bible translations, most popular Bibles by reading level. So now what we've done here, and I'm very, very grateful to the staff who worked on this, because this is a little bit kind of tedious stuff, but you have the King James and a kind of overview, if you will, the date it was published, and then a few select scriptures straight across the board that let you compare and see the differences. And what I like about this, I'm not suggesting that any of you give up your King James Bible. I'm simply suggesting that sometimes it's fun to have something. When I say something's a fun read, I read through a book that was, here we go into the details, it was edited properly, It had flow to it. It conveyed the idea or the essence of the writer's conceptualizations of what is trying to be said. A fun read for me would be probably digging into maybe a level 8, like the NIV, where you can just blow through a book, and you're not doing it for scholarly correctness. You're doing it to read. That's all we're discussing right here. That helps you to put these concepts in your brain that then fulfill John 15. The Word lives in you. If you abide in the Word and the Word abides in you, and I don't need to say any more, that's the reason for doing this. So again, this is a beginning. It's already up. As you see, I'm on my site. But it's really important that if somebody asks you, and I'm sure that you'll have the opportunity, point them to the website, tell them to go and read, and with what I just told you, take that information and take the time to explain that to somebody who's asking you, because honestly, I think this is one of the few ministries, and I may be one of the few ministers, that there's no hill that I want to go die on for the sake of being right or do as I do. I'm interested in people growing in God. And you can't do that if you are confused or if you don't understand, or I've met people like this. In fact, I saw this a lot with younger people. They get a Bible, they don't really want to read the King James. Why? Because A, it's archaic, and it's kind of choppy for them. So what do you do when you have something that you're not really looking forward to? You put it aside. You don't read it. So what I'm saying is for the benefit of those people, and you will encounter them, and I will keep encountering them. I'm impressed that folks already have kind of tried to digest this, but some of the folks commenting here, for example, this individual, because the title of this is "What Bible Should I Use?" This individual quoting me said, "Whichever one you're going to read," and that's what we're hoping for. Now, some people put their preferences in here. Somebody said, "I like and prefer to use the New American Standard Bible." I don't care. That's your reading preference. So I want us to kind of get off this thing about King James. As I said, I use it. And if I'm going to be completely truthful with you, I only use it because that's the Bible I started listening to Dr. Scott with, which has all of my notes, and I'm not really using it as the best English version. I'm using it because now I'm in there, and my Bibles are all King James marked up. But if you're starting out, I would say splurge a little bit. Get yourself a King James to follow along when I'm doing a chapter and verse, or I tell you turn to a certain page. But get a Bible that you enjoy reading. It should be joyful. It should be something that you do, and you do regularly. So that's what I have to say about that. I hope that people will explore, and you are all equipped to bring people to the website and help them navigate. And let's look down here, just the bottom line. The bottom line, for example, King James of Jude 1:22, and some have compassion, making a difference, and some, I'm moving down the line, some have mercy and have mercy on some who are doubting. Have mercy on those who doubt. Be merciful to those who doubt. And you must show mercy to those whose faith is wavering. Show mercy to some people who have doubts. Let's go right to the end here. Let's move this along. Show mercy to those who doubt. Well, the question, I'm going to tell you something. This is what I do. When I'm doing comparative, even in the English versions, I want you to take a look. There's one thing that stands out. The NLT. It adds, whose faith is wavering. So that would prompt me, if I was trying to do a study, that would prompt me to actually go in to that verse, go into the Greek, and actually look, is it implying that? Or is it simply implying those who doubt in general? Maybe those who may or may not have faith. Maybe they're doubting that this faith is real. So that opens up the questions start coming, which then beg you to go back in and find the answer. And in the process, you've done something. You've brought clarity for yourself to a passage that might have otherwise, could very easily say, look at this NLT, and you must show mercy to those whose faith is wavering. But what if you go in there and you read, and either directly from either corrections I've made or from the original, it's not implying that. Then you know that the NLT was very loose and not even trying to conceptualize the inspired writing of Jude. So this is why, and I hope this is going to be helpful. There's somebody here who, this is on a different, I think this is from YouTube, the others were from Facebook. This person says, I've noticed you point out there are certain words that are mistranslated in the King James. Is there a certain translation you feel is more accurate than the King James? And the answer is no. And not because I think the King James is the most accurate, but we're dealing with English. That's the problem. And when you finally like if somebody out there could just get that, we're dealing with English, not Greek, precision of Greek, not Hebrew, even if it is ambiguous, it still carries with it ideas and concepts that we, from our English perspective, cannot grasp. So I'm trying to kind of knock the junk out of people's excuses to say, this is the tool that you need. Now, my goal is to put some fun facts in there of either who helped in the translation. In fact, I think I mentioned this to you last week, and it only came to my attention because of a conversation I was having with somebody that I was told, I think it was for the Jerusalem Bible, that they had asked for J.R. Tolkien to translate or to produce a version of the book of Jonah for the Jerusalem Bible. It's kind of a fun fact to know, J.R. Tolkien, right? Lord of the Rings and all of that great writing. But here's the problem, he wasn't a Hebrew scholar. So it's kind of it'll be an interesting story for you to read of how exactly he produced this version of Jonah that's in the Jerusalem Bible. So there's all these fun things to I think they're fun. They're interesting. Some of them have more to do. For example, and I've said this many times, the King James, some people get very offended at the King James. I think it's actually funny. This is a wonderful, not only does it contain the 66 books of the Bible, but what I love about this Bible is it also is a slice of history. We're looking at the language that, from the Bible was actually physically 1611 produced, but its production began before that. And from that time until, say, the time of Shakespeare's writing, and we see an incredible development, almost a finalization of the language, save a few archaic words that are contained herein or therein, but a kind of a finalization of the development of our language. Not only that, the King James gives you insight into the mind of individuals at that particular point in time. Why, if you go and read directly from the Greek, you'll find that many times where the King James says he or him, or it is a plural that is being translated as masculine plural, many times what we find is it is in the neutral or neuter gender, neutral, not neither one, in the Greek. And the translators didn't really know what exactly do we do with this. We don't have neutral or a neuter gender. Well, maybe now we do, who knows. But back then they didn't have that. So how do you convey that? Well, it's the simplest thing is to go back to masculine gender. So this essentially does become a very sexist translation, not in the time it was produced, but for anybody then reading at a later time. Now, let's just talk about this. This one particular version influenced and has over generations societal framework of how people function in society. Think of this. If this book was produced at the time, it wasn't sexist. It was the societal norm. Women were nothing and men were everything. So if you take that concept and carry it through to now, things are changing, times are changing, people are changing, but this translation or this version has not, say, 100 years or 200 years or 300 years. When much has changed, this has not. So it really is imperative for somebody who's going to go and look into the Greek and see, wait a minute, this doesn't say him, nor does it say her. It's suggesting all, as in all inclusively. Think of how that must have for a long period of time, because the Bible was used and was promoted in schools. It was everywhere. How it promoted societal norms that were from this period carried forward. And I'm not suggesting that the Bible alone, but it had a huge impact. We seldom think of that when we read the King James. And then you go to what I think is a real travesty, where they tried to make the Bible less sexist. And the Bible itself is not sexist, by the way, but the versions may be, depending on who translated. So then they came up with the new King James Version, which its design was to be less sexist and more gender-friendly. Well, I'm opposed to that too. I just want to know what the original says. I'm not interested in somebody's agenda of either putting down or elevating a gender. I just want to know what it says. Isn't that what we want to know? Isn't that what we should want to know? So that's why I said learning the Bible isn't dull, and understanding each one of these has its own nuance. And you're going to find some, as I said, some interesting things we'll put up so that you can kind of peruse. And this will be a long time in the making. I mean, I'm glad that you got it up this quickly, but it'll be a while in the making because there's a lot of elements to this with a lot of detail. Like I said, going to be able to click on a Bible or a version and see it. And then there's something that I want to add to this, which when I saw the paper version of this, I didn't see it on the website myself. This is the first time I'm seeing it here. I saw the printout version of what's on the website. But I also would like to add a section to this which will help people understand why, at times, although I haven't in a long time, why I would be inclined to use a language like Armenian or Ethiopic. Why? Because those languages go, not so much the Ethiopic, certainly they had, their language is old, but for example, Armenian, the language, actually the alphabet and the language itself was made for producing the Bible. So a lot of times we need these other languages, and I want to be able to include those and show kind of, if you could envision the globe, it is indeed a fulfillment of what Jesus said when he said, go ye into all the world and make learners, make disciples. And you start looking at the globe and you start seeing that almost every place on the planet where a different tongue is spoken, a translation or a version has been made. And these to me are the treasures that we have that I want to be able to get people to navigate, look at, get interested in. And there's a lot more to the Bible than just, it's a book, it's got paper in it and pages, and I sometimes use it on Sunday. There's a lot more to it. And if people would just engage. So this is a great start. I'm hoping to expand this. There's so many things I want to do on the website, and there's probably not enough time and not enough people to pull from. So at least this is up, and I'm just kind of delighted, and I think it's going to be a great tool for all of you, especially when you encounter people who are not that familiar with the things you already know. And just to be able to bring them here and navigate for them and show them, just like I just explained to you very, very clearly, that the Bible is not about eeny, meeny, miny, mo, oh, I'll read John. It has nothing to do with that. And people who do that, that's like, do you go to a restaurant and open up the menu and go, oh, okay, I'm going to have the worst thing on the menu today. So I want people to think about every part of this, which I think is the most important journey. It's the most important education. It's the most important thing you'll ever do. So why wouldn't you want to know and understand and not be like some of these? I'll tell you, when I worked in the jails and the prisons, this was very prevalent because people come in, now that they're there and they've figured out that they may be there for a long time, there's this desire like, well, I guess I should start reading, I should start taking classes because they offer inmates educational classes. But the biggest thing that happens, which is it's good and bad at the same time, is you've got ministers who go in and it's like, well, it's a captive audience. Let's proselytize. Let's try and make converts as much as we can. And the term jailhouse religion is probably very apropos, considering that most of the people, not most, but a good portion of them, once they get out, they're not interested in God. That was only something to pass the time. But the questions that I've heard chaplains answer to the inmates is rather disturbing. Now, I've heard this over and over and over again. People say, they just got a Bible. Where should I start? Because it is overwhelming. When you think about it, it's overwhelming. When you open you're looking at it, it's like, wow. And if you got a smaller Bible, the font is much smaller. That's even more overwhelming. But I would listen to the chaplains. Different chaplains all say the same thing because they think if you're reading the book written by, and they don't even explain that John wasn't the disciple of love always, but they'll just say, well, John represents love. Well, you should read that one because I'm sorry, that's a stupid beginning. And that's even a dumb introduction. Now, if somebody said to me, I'm interested in, I might point them in a specific place. But I'd much rather give you this type of an education that gives you enough substance to consider. You can look at least the samples we've put up. For example, if you look here, and I'm focusing on the NLT because it's in my field of vision right here, non-literal thought-for-thought translation rather than word-for-word translation, originally conceived as a revision to the Living Bible paraphrase published in 1971. It also gives you an idea. We've changed, unfortunately, and not for the better. Our language frame has changed and not for the better. We use more slang. I feel people are less, and this is a reflection on our educational system, they are less proficient in their own language. So there's a lot of elements to deal with. And not to be over analytical, but that's why I said to you, if you get too hung up on so-and-so said I should read this, you're reading what may not be for you initially. And so I just don't see the value in doing that. So I think this is pretty clear. I think I've made it clear. So if you're interested, this is up on the website. And my goal will be to make this highly interactive for you and a place where you kind of learning and discovery. And honestly, I just can't think of anything better, because even if people do not listen to me, just to have this information it's huge. So I'm just praying that people will kind of digest this and think about what's being presented here and get some sanity to some of these really, I think, absurd things that people suggest. There's something very freeing to know that you can put the truth out there. Now, people have the choice. They can be offended. Listen, I was offended. I've told you this before. I was very offended when I first started listening to Dr. Scott because I had all that traditional baggage. I'm not saying that I was ever a traditional Christian, but I had traditional baggage, things that were put in my brain that this is that. And I remember I've told you the story about Christmas, getting real mad because how could that be? And actually, it upset me for a good while. And then as I started to kind of get over it and realize, why am I upset? Should I be happy to believe in a delusion and a fallacy, or should I be happy that someone's given me the license to say the truth is okay? And if the rest of the world doesn't want the truth, that's okay too, but I want the truth. I want to know what actually is being said so I can know and understand more about God. It's pretty simple.